Welcome to the Holly Furtick YouTube channel. I wanted to give you a little sneak peek at something that we're doing at Elevation. It's a new mini-series with our small groups called Highlights, where I get together with a friend to discuss my husband's sermon from that week. We will talk in depth about our favorite highlights and discuss practical ways that we can apply them to our lives. Now, if you haven't seen the sermon from this week, go watch that on the Elevation Church YouTube channel. I'll put the link for you below so that you find the right one. Then come back here. For now, here's this week's highlights. I'm telling you, I am just always blown away at the brilliance of our pastor. I know he's my husband, but man, he's incredible. And this week, he brought us a message called Let Me Show You the Door. And he not only brilliantly walked us through a very unfamiliar large passage of scripture, but then he also took us to the temptation of Jesus and gave us some really practical handles for our lives. And I can't wait to discuss it with you. Today, I have with me as my guest our UC campus pastor, Chet Pete. Hello.
Hey, I'm so excited to be on. Did you save the best for last? Is that?
Yes, of course. I saved the best for last. I'm so excited to talk with you today.
And this message.
Man, how does he do it?
We could literally talk for 2-3 hours.
I know.
About this message.
I know.
You want to get to it? You want to get to it now?
Okay, let's just start. Give me my first slide, because this was how the whole sermon was sort of centered around these 3 points. And it says, how to show the devil your door. So the idea was, let me show you the door. What do you do when the enemy is tempting you, is lying to you, is leading you astray, and you're supposed to show him the door? How do we do that? Through comeback, connection, and credit. And so Pastor Stephen told us every time the devil came at him, he had a comeback.
Yes.
Are you a comeback person?
I think I am. I think I am. I mean, I can give you a quick tool because,
tell me, because I am not, you know how Pastor Stephen said, like, some people have a comeback and then some people, like, get all the way to the bottom of the stairs?
You're the
I'm
bottom.
I'm like a really long staircase bottom of the stairs. But.
Okay, no, we have to do this then.
Okay.
What is a story, a time where, you wish you would have said... You thought about it down the road and now you're like, hey, I wish. If I see this person, this is the thing that I would say.
Okay, so this is a classic story. I've shared it with our e-groups before, but there was this woman who was a really good friend of mine. She was like an older mom. She had a lot more kids than me, and I would go to her house. I was, at that stage in my life, I was very overwhelmed with my toddlers and just everything in my life. Mm-hmm. And this woman was really helpful to me at the time. And I really valued her friendship. And so I was at her house one day, and I was getting ready to leave, and the baby was in the car seat, and she was standing in between me and the baby. And she was like, hey, before you leave, I just need to tell you that through a lot of prayer, my husband and I, we've just decided that we need to leave Elevation. And she was like, but we can still be friends. And I am like, there's like fight or flee. I am flee every single time. And so in the moment, I'm like, I don't want to have this conversation. I'm very upset.
While holding
this is really,
the car seat.
No, the car seat. The woman is between me and the car seat. And so all I'm thinking about is I want to get my baby and get out of here, because I want to I'm just the kind of person, I need to process it, and then maybe we can have another conversation later, but I'm just not good in the moment. And so she goes on to say something like, she was like, the reason is we just don't feel like Pastor Stephen is preaching the gospel. And we know that there are so many people who are going to the club on Saturday night and they're coming to Elevation on Sunday morning. And we just don't think that's right.
Wow.
And I literally stood there and I was like, I was like, how can I wrap up this conversation? I was like, yeah, it's fine. I understand. We can still be friends. And I get the baby and I leave and I get in the car and I just called my husband and I started crying. I was like, and she said that we don't preach the gospel. And so it was just a very traumatic experience for me. I wish I had something to say to her in the moment.
All right. Right now, here's your moment. She walks into this room and you get to look her in her eyes. What do you say? Like, what do you say? What is your comeback?
Man, I think I would just say, friend. I think I would say, I am really glad that people feel comfortable coming to our church no matter what they've done or what they've been through that week. You know, I feel like we are preaching the gospel, but we're a hospital. We're not a country club. And we want people of every walk in their relationship with God to feel comfortable at Elevation Church.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Maybe she's in an e-group. Maybe they
came back.
Maybe they came back. Maybe they came back. No, I love this. I think we have to, this is why we have to be in God's word. This is why we have to show up at church, because we can have these comebacks locked and loaded, ready to go, because the enemy's loud.
Yes.
He's going to talk. He's going to talk if we're going in the right direction.
And when he says, that's the key, right?
Yes,
the resistance only comes when you're headed in the right direction. And Pastor Stephen said that at the top. He was talking about the GPS and how the GPS is not going to talk to you unless you're making the wrong turns. And the enemy is not going to mess with you if you're not going in the direction. He likes what you're doing. Yeah, if he likes what you're doing, you're fine. Why would he waste his time with you? But 100%. If you're going in God's direction, the struggle is the proof. Oh, I love that so much. Pastor Stephen said, after the resistance came revelation. And then he said, I love this quote. And then he said, how can you get strong without resistance? And I think so many times in my life, when something difficult comes into my life, I'm like, there's something wrong.
Yes.
There's some, but when you think about exercising, like you can't get strong without resistance.
100%.
Without, lifting things that are heavy.
100%. Yeah, if we want to grow, if we want to get better, if we want to, Pastor said it this way. He was talking about we have a Paul-sized calling.
Yes.
Paul-sized calling. But we have to have a Barnabas level of encouragement. Why?
Yeah.
It's because we go through things, because we have resistance coming against us. We have to have people around us to be able to move forward because we have resistance that we're experiencing.
Look at what Lisa Jackson from our Roanoke campus said. She said, God is taking me somewhere. That's why the devil is struggling with me and telling me negative things, because he knows that there is something great in me. So I must not get distracted by the conflict that I don't see the purpose. Lisa, it's so true. I mean, we have to realize that these difficulties that are coming up against us in our lives are an indication that we are headed the right way,
the right
not
direction.
That we need to stop
100%.
And go a different way. All right, I got to go back kind of to when Pastor Stephen said, I've got grace for this, because that really resonated with me, because it made me think about how there are so many people that I'll come across in my life, and I'm sure you have too, that you watch go through something difficult, like these resistance type moments, but sometimes they're like epic resistance type moments, like a friend who maybe has been struggling with going through a divorce, and she's a single mom, and you watch somebody go through something. It could be that. It could be watching somebody go through a health crisis or something that they're struggling through with their kids, and you go like, I could never do that. If that happened to me, I wouldn't be able to
100%.
Handle it. And you watch this person and you're like, oh, there's a grace.
There's a grace.
There's a grace on their life for what they're going through.
Yeah, and it works both ways. It works with difficulties, but sometimes it's just new things that you're experiencing in your life. I was thinking about in this season, just what am I graced for? What am I
what are you graced for?
Teenage boys.
Oh gosh, bless you.
Like advice. You have two teenage boys and one in college now. My boys just turned 13.
Yeah.
And it's scary to think about what they're hearing.
Yes.
The conversations that I need to have.
Yes.
What can they hear from me first?
Yes.
Am I moving too fast? Am I moving too slow?
Yeah.
And this message just gives a level of confidence to slow down and be like, God's graced me for this.
God's graced me for this. He gave you.
He gave me these boys.
He gave you two boys at the same time.
At the same time.
That's like, what is the chances of having twins, right?
I don't know. We need to look it up.
It's like, well, I don't know. Let's make up a number. 1 in 100 million, right? He gave you two teenage boys at the same time. That's because he knew that you and Whitney were graced for this moment. And it makes me think about, it could be something new that you're going through. It could be something that you were born with. But God has graced us for what he's given us. And when you look at it that way, you have so much more confidence going into your situation. Okay, here's what Laura Tutwiler said. She said, when the enemy comes and tells you that you can't do it, tell him you got grace for it. That's my highlight this week. I need to stop letting the enemy in my mind. When he says no way, I say Yahweh. Remember that song?
Yeah.
And then she says, when he tries to tell me what I'm not, I need to remember who God says I am.
Amazing.
Yeah. I think it was I was going to say, I think that was my favorite part of the sermon. I just love the sermon so much, but it's so encouraging.
I couldn't pick a favorite part.
It's so encouraging to think of the things in our lives that God really has graced us for.
The other part of this, you start getting into comparison. Like watching what other people are graced for, diminishing what God has graced you for.
Yes.
So don't despise the season that you find yourself in.
Yeah.
It's powerful, just like she said, to be able to stop in the moment that I'm in and say, this is where God has me. He's graced me for this.
Yeah.
When I'm there, he'll grace me for that too.
Yeah, and it's funny because comparison, that's one of the enemy's lies, right? Because Pastor Stephen talked about that at the beginning. He said the devil he led Jesus, he lied, and then he left.
Yes.
And he said most of us get stuck in the first two.
Yes.
And it's like identifying the lies, right? And I think one of the lies that the enemy tells us is, like, I wish I had that person's struggles, not my struggles, but that person.
Yes.
I mean, they look like they live but you never know what people are going through.
The devil will show you that door.
Yes.
Comparison is one of the doors that the devil will show you. Don't go in that one. Don't go in that one.
What are you graced for? I also loved how he talked about the connection, so the comeback, the connection, and the credit. Because he said sometimes you have to be your own Barnabas, right?
Yes.
But then he also said what God does through you is often connected to the they in your life.
Yes. As I was thinking about this, I love the community that we have at our church.
I know.
The campus pastors that we, every single Monday we do a campus pastor call. So it's 9:30 in the morning. We all get on a call and we talk about what God's doing in our church.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about the calls after the call.
Okay.
These are the side texts happening like, hey, can we talk about this? Can we talk about that? We're in the same season of life, a lot of us, with kids and leading our churches, our campuses. Like, for us to be able to have that space, that safe space for us to be able to encourage each other, I think that's what positions us to be able to continue to go as far as God has called us to.
It's finding people who are on the same path that you're on, which would just be like being in an e-group. But then it's also finding those people that like are in the same season of life that you're in. Or I think about my dad, he has a support group. And having a support group, whether it's for like AA or NA, or maybe a support group for parents with children with special needs, or people who are going through a divorce. I know there was an e-group at one point for parents who have children who struggle with addiction. And finding those people in your life to walk alongside with you and say, yeah, I'm struggling with this too. Or here's how, like when you were like, you got any advice for teenage boys? I'm like, but even that is connection, right? Of saying like, no, it's hard. It's supposed to be hard. It's okay that it's hard. And I love how Pastor Stephen really encouraged us to find those people that can walk with you, that can encourage you 100%. When you're low, and you can encourage them when they're low. All right, we got to get to our last one. Because I was going to say was my favorite part, but this is also one of the best things. I love how Pastor Stephen always ends so strong, and he ends with just like a really huge charge. And so he talked about credit, and he said, I think this is our quote, stop giving the devil God's credit. And I loved how he said, I don't know if you caught this, but I jotted this down in my notes. He said, coincidences are things that you haven't given God credit for yet. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. And
I missed that one. Say it one more time.
Okay, well, this is what I wrote.
That is not in my notes.
Coincidence, things you haven't given God credit for yet.
Are you sure this wasn't over coffee or breakfast this morning?
It's right here. I wrote it down this morning.
Wow, that's powerful.
And just to think about, like, stop giving the devil God's credit. And Pastor Stephen, he got up there and he said, if you want the devil to leave, give him a list.
Yeah.
And he started listing off things, and he talked about, I wonder if I can remember it, because I know I didn't write this down because at that point I was standing. But what did he say? It was lift your hands and list.
I'm not only lifting my hands, I'm making a list. What a picture of when we're worshiping God.
Yes.
To lift our hands and say, oh, he woke me up this morning. Yeah. He saved my soul. Yeah. He blessed me with the family. I'm mad at my boss right now, but he blessed me with the job.
Yeah, I got a job.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To continue to do that, puts you into a framework. I mean, the Bible says, enter his gates with thanksgiving, his courts with praise. Yeah. What does it mean for us to lift up our hands, worshiping God, and make a list of his faithfulness?
I hope that was helpful for you. It's so important to talk about what God is speaking to you, to let the seed of his word get planted in the soil of your heart. If you want to hear the full conversation and participate as well, join an Elevation e-group. We have groups that meet in person and online, literally all over the world, and we would love to have you. To learn more, go to elevationchurch.cc and comment below. Let me know what some of your highlights were from this week's message. Thanks for joining me. Make sure you like and subscribe so that you'll get notified when next week's sermon discussion is available, and I'll see you back here next week.